Welcome into another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to unpack something I think we've all thought about at one point or another, that blurry line between love and attachment. Have you ever, been head over heels for someone?
Yeah.
Only to realize, maybe a little too late, it was more like need than like real love, healthy love.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's trippy. So to help us figure this whole thing out, we're diving into a text called Love versus Attachment, the thin line that separates them. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll all have some aha moments about our own relationships.
For sure.
So how do we even begin to separate these two big forces, love and attachment?
Well, I think this text does a really good job at sort of right off the bat diving into the definition of love. It really paints it as this beautiful thing where it's you want the absolute best for that other person, even if it means that you're making hard choices,
Yeah.
It even compares it to love being this safe haven, this space where two people can feel supported to grow.
I like that.
It's not about needing the other person to feel complete,
Right.
but it's choosing to share your life with them.
Yeah, and that's where I think it gets kind of tricky, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because attachment can stem from that fear of not being complete.
Exactly.
That fear of being alone, of loss, of not being enough on our own.
That fear of incompleteness or something.
Yes. And I think that's where so many of us trip up, because both love and attachment can feel so intensely connected to another person.
Oh, absolutely.
That it's so hard to actually tease them apart when you're in the thick of it, in the messy real world,
For sure.
So how do we tell the difference? How do we actually figure out what's love and what's attachment when things start to, get messy?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. And thankfully, this text gives us 4 really clear ways to kind of separate the two, which I found super helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. So difference number 1, they say, is freedom versus control.
Okay.
And this is a big one, right? Because the text argues that real, genuine love, thrives when both people feel free. And it even uses this analogy of a bird, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
They're saying love is wanting that bird to, soar as high as it can, even if it means the bird might fly in a totally different direction sometimes.
I like that, yeah.
Right. And then they're attachment. Well, that's more like keeping that bird in a cage because you're so scared of it flying away.
Oh, 100%, yeah. It's that fear of losing it if you don't, keep it contained or whatever.
And which, okay, let's be honest, I think we've probably all felt that urge to do at some point in some relationship, right? It's normal to want to hold on to something so good.
Absolutely. It's totally normal. It's just about recognizing that difference,
Exactly. It's about recognizing okay, is this me genuinely wanting what's best for them? Or is this more about what makes me feel safe and secure?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Which kind of leads us to the second big difference the text talks about, which is selflessness versus selfishness.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So they're saying love at its very core isn't about keeping score, right? It's not transactional.
Not a business deal. Yeah.
Exactly. The text is true love just finds pure joy in the other person's happiness.
Yeah.
Period.
Oh,
Full
I'll
stop.
do that. Yeah.
Right. Whereas attachment, they're saying, often keeps kind of asking, okay, but what am I getting out of this? You can be so sneaky, right? Attachment can masquerade as love when really it's about filling our own needs.
Oh, totally.
Whether it's for validation or security or whatever it is.
And that actually ties into that need for security is really the third difference that they highlight.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's security versus dependence.
Oh, well.
So it's in a loving relationship, you do feel secure. You feel safe, you feel held. But it's not this shaky ground where your entire world depends on the other person.
You're not going to fall apart if they're not there.
Exactly. You don't need them to prop you up because you're already standing strong on your own 2 feet,
Yeah, I like that.
But with attachment, that security can so quickly become this need, this feeling you need the other person to feel whole.
And that's where things get messy, right?
And that's where things get messy, then that can lead to jealousy and possessiveness and all of these behaviors that actually end up pushing love away.
Ugh. Yeah, been there. Okay, so we've got freedom versus control, selflessness versus selfishness, security and love versus dependence that comes with attachment. I'm ready for number 4. Hit me with it. Okay, so difference number 4, and this one, I don't know about you, but this one felt like a huge aha moment for me when I was reading this.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
It's growth versus stagnation.
Okay.
And what they're saying here is like true love allows for both people to kind of like evolve and change, even if those changes take them on like slightly different paths.
Yeah.
They actually use this analogy of two trees growing side by side.
Ooh, I like that.
And they're saying each tree, has its own roots, its own separate thing, but they're also connected in this way that lets them both like thrive, which I thought was really cool.
I love that. Yeah.
And then they're saying attachment. Attachment's more like it wants to freeze things in time, like change feels like a threat to whatever that attachment is holding on to.
Right. Like it's too scary.
Exactly. And that, to me, is where things can get, like, that's where resentment starts to build, don't you think? Because people need to grow. Relationships need to grow, too.
Yeah.
It can't just stay the same forever.
Right. 100%. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And this is where it gets really empowering, because the text argues that even if we recognize, like, oh, shoot, that's me. I do that. Like, I get a little attached. I have those tendencies. They're saying it's not a life sentence.
It doesn't mean you're doomed.
Exactly. Like, we can actually choose to transform that attachment into something that feels more like healthy, loving connection.
So it's about like changing our relationship to attachment.
Yes. And they're saying it really all starts with self-love, which, I know it probably sounds kind of cheesy.
Yeah, it can.
But I think what they're getting at is that so much of the time that like clinginess we can feel in relationships comes from trying to fill a void that's really within ourselves, Yeah. We're looking for someone else to make us feel whole.
To validate us, to tell us we're enough.
Exactly. Instead of building that validation from the inside out.
So are there like practical things we can do? Like how do we actually do that? Cultivate more self-love?
That's the best part. The text actually gives us like 3 concrete steps to shift from that place of attachment to a more solid foundation of love.
Okay, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Okay, step 1, and this one makes perfect sense, right? Cultivate independence. And they're not saying, like, go become a lone wolf, push everyone away, but more like cultivate that inner knowing that you are whole and complete, even on your own, right?
It's about liking your own company,
Exactly. Nurturing your own interests, spending time with yourself, all of that.
Yeah, I can see how that would help.
Right. Okay, step 2 feels a little bit scarier. I'm not going to lie. It's practicing detachment.
Ooh, okay. So how do they define that? Because that could sound kind of scary. Like, should we be detached from our partners?
Yeah, no, and they address that. And they're like, this isn't about becoming like cold or uncaring or like pushing people away.
Yeah.
It's more about loosening that grip, that grip of fear and control that often comes with attachment.
Letting go a little.
Yes. It's about trusting the relationship, trusting yourself, and trusting that letting go of that need to control everything can actually lead to stronger bonds.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Like counterintuitive, but makes sense.
Seemingly.
Okay. And that brings us to step 3, which I think is probably the most important of all. Building self-love.
The basis of it all, yeah.
Exactly. It's recognizing that you are worthy of love, just as you are, without needing to do anything to prove it.
Because we all are worthy of love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we actually start to believe that deep down, like really believe it,
I feel like that changes everything.
it changes everything about how we show up in relationships because we're not clinging on so tight.
Right. Not coming from that place of need.
Exactly. We're choosing to be there from this place of wholeness and confidence and like, I'm good, you're good, we're good.
Yeah. I love that. So much better than like, I need you to make me feel good.
Oh my gosh, yes. Night and day. And what I think is so cool about all of this is that it's not about like achieving some perfect ideal of I'm always loving, I'm never attached,
Right, because that's not realistic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The text even says it's more like a dance,
Yeah.
This back and forth between love and attachment that we'll probably be navigating our entire lives.
It's a journey.
Exactly. It's a journey. And like any good journey, it's going to have some twists and turns, right?
Totally.
The point is just to keep learning and growing.
100%.
And I think the biggest takeaway here, if you're listening to this, you're like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. What do I do? It all starts with that self-awareness.
Knowing yourself.
Yes. Being aware of your own patterns, your needs, where you might be tripping yourself up. That's how we can take those messy human experiences and actually turn them into opportunities to connect more deeply with the people in our lives.
Love that. That's a great takeaway.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us today as we explore this complex but like truly fascinating dance between love and attachment.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to all of you listening, we'll catch you next time for another deep dive.